Hey there, I'm Jessica Ramesh, International Living's Panama editor, and today I am here with you to talk a little bit about networking and meeting other people in Panama, particularly when you are new to town and a new expat. So, as I said, today we're going to talk a little bit about networking in Panama. I definitely get a lot of questions from people who are thinking about moving down here, both singles and couples, gay, straight, you name it, everybody asking me, will I find it easy to fit in? Is it going to be easy to meet people? And definitely, you should all feel reassured by one thing. When you come down here and you start talking to other expats across the board, no matter where you go, Boquete, Panama City, um, overwhelmingly, they will all pretty much say the same thing. Most of the expats you will encounter and ask questions of will tell you that their lives here are way more social than they were back home. It's just down to the nature of expat communities. They very often will also tell you that their lives are more exciting and that that's in many, many, many cases also a lot healthier just because the way that people live and walk and eat here is so different, and that tends to affect you even if you're not from here once you come down and live here. But back to meeting people, and I have a few little notes here because I have so much that I want to cover today. So if I look down, I'm just looking at those notes. First off is one of the things that I think we should address right off the bat, which is whether or not you should choose more of an expat haven in Panama or lives in a smaller town, maybe more local, less expats. Very often I'll be talking to people at international living conferences, for example, and people will tell me, we don't want to live in an expat enclave, in a gated community, because they have this sense, which is a mistaken, really, a misconception, that in doing so, they'll be cut off from local community and from meeting locals and practicing their Spanish, which is definitely, for a lot of people, one of the most enriching parts of moving down here. But the reality here in Panama is that we have a lot of really beautiful communities, and these appeal to both expats and locals. We don't have any communities in Panama that are made up of a majority expat population and not many locals. No matter where you move, you are going to have local neighbors, whether it's a gated community, big town, small town. That's just the reality of Panama. So you don't really have to worry about that. And for anybody who is thinking of moving abroad, and this might be your first time living outside of the US or Canada, or wherever you're from, joining me from today, then I definitely do highly recommend moving somewhere where there is an expat community, whether it's small or large. It's very helpful to have some people from back home with whom you can, yes, commiserate at times, and of whom you can ask certain specific questions, because people who have lived here their entire lives, locals, they're going to have a different experience and a different set of information to share with you. Whereas people who have moved here, like you, the expats who have come before you, they're going to have a lot of information to share with you that's going to help you when you're new in terms of where do I stay when I get down there? Setting up house. Does anybody know an English speaking electrician? Hey, do you guys have a recommendation for an English speaking dentist? Sometimes your local friends will have recommendations for you. They'll have tons of information for you, but it's really nice to also have that expat community so that those expat specific questions can get answered. And so I do definitely recommend, again, whether it's a small expat community or a big one, it's good if you want a soft landing. And particularly if you're not fluent in Spanish. I know a lot of you joining me today are probably working on your Spanish or not fluent in Spanish. Then again, it is nice to have that help available just for when you need it. Now, another thing that I want to say about networking and meeting people and making friends in Panama is yay for the digital era, okay? Back in the days of snail mail, it was harder in so many ways to meet people before you got down here, to make plans, to make sure that when you land here, you say you're coming down for a scouting trip and you only have 2 weeks here or 3 months here, whatever it is, you want to make the most of your time. You want to have some meetups set up right away. You can do that now thanks to the digital era. So I definitely recommend don't put off your networking in Panama until you get down here. You can actually start networking in Panama before you get down here. And one of the things that's really popular here in Panama amongst expat groups is Facebook. So you're going to find that a lot of the expat groups in Panama do have Facebook groups or pages. And depending on where you're going, you can look them up. If you're interested in Coronado, you can look up Coronado expats in your little search bar on Facebook. You'll see several groups come up. There are also typically good groups for rentals and property. So if you're thinking, I need some help finding a rental, I want to see if maybe in the expat community somebody has a recommendation, or maybe I can rent from an expat and then pick their brain while I'm staying with them. You can also find groups dedicated to that on Facebook. Let's say you're interested in our Caribbean region of Bocas del Toro. Well, they have a great Facebook page dedicated to rentals and properties in Bocas. And I personally have found a lot of really great rentals, not on the real estate websites, but on Facebook. So keep that in mind. The other thing that I recommend doing is downloading to your smartphone before you get down here an application called WhatsApp. I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with it, but it may not yet be as popular where you're living as it is here in Panama. But it's a free messaging app, and it is by far the most used app for communicating here in Panama. So you definitely want to have that. A lot of people, if you say, hey, can I ask you some questions? I met you yesterday. I'd like to pick your brain. They'll tell you, yeah, just contact me on WhatsApp to set up a coffee date, or send me your questions via WhatsApp. You can even do video calls before you arrive for free. Another good option for networking here in Panama online, again, is Internations. Now, you can join Internations before you get down here, but really Internations is great for when you are here in Panama, specifically in Panama City. You can go online and search for a website called internations.org. And once things are back to normal, I'm sure that they will go back to hosting their twice weekly get-togethers in Panama City, and those are purely for networking. What's great about going to an event that's specifically for networking is that you will meet people from all over. You'll meet people who are just visiting, you'll meet people who have been living here a long time, you'll meet expats, you'll meet locals. Everybody will be there with their cell phones out to exchange information, or their business cards if they have one. And they're really there for that purpose. So you don't have to be shy about going alone. I like that. I can just walk up to people and introduce myself, go around the room and say, hey, I'm Jessica, how are you? How long have you been here? And start a conversation. It's so much easier when you know that everybody's there for that purpose, right? Now, what about the other social media? You might be asking yourself, what about Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn? If you think you're going to want to network with the business community, then by all means, check out LinkedIn, very popular here in Panama. I don't find it very useful if you're not looking to do business here. I don't find it very useful for purely social stuff, but for business, it's definitely popular here in Panama. You can start connecting with people here in whatever you're interested in. If you're thinking you might want to open up a little B&B here in Panama, then search for B&B owners on LinkedIn, hospitality stuff on LinkedIn, specifically here in Panama. Twitter is also great for business and for just taking a pulse of what locals are talking about. But most of that is going to be in Spanish, so you do need a little bit of fluency for that. Now, if you're interested, however, in learning about the food scene and restaurants in Panama, then Instagram is probably your best bet. That's how I learn about new vegetable delivery services, or somebody doing vegan catering, or what are the best looking cakes right now in town. All of that food related stuff is great on Instagram. But again, I do think that the best thing for networking with expat groups, right now I'm finding most of those groups on Facebook. Just to give you some examples of how I've networked before getting to a place here in Panama. Recently, I'm living in Panama City, Panama. Recently, I was thinking about moving to the mountain town of El Valle, which is about a 2-hour drive from the city. And so what I did was I decided to spend a month there and see how I felt. I set up a rental, which is something you should never do. I set it up sight unseen. A friend sent me some photos and I said, yeah, I'll rent your house there. And when I got there, it didn't quite meet my needs and specifications. So I just went on the Facebook group and said, hey guys, I'm here. I've rented a place, but just for a couple days, and I'm looking for a long-term rental. Got some great recommendations that way. And I also was there already and drove around and found a sign and found another great rental that way. And being, there for a month, I really wanted to use my time wisely. So ahead of time, I had networked. I had gone onto Facebook, found El Valle groups on Facebook, and posted my questions. And, you guys all know the, rules of etiquette, and these apply to posting on these groups as well. Always say please and thank you. The other thing that I've learned that's really good to do is search and make sure that there's not already an answer posted to your question. If they've already dealt with that recently, then they might just point you to a previous post. If you say, hey, I've searched and I haven't found the answer to this question, could any of you let me know, are there by any chance any apartment rentals that are close to the hot springs, for example? Whatever it is that you're looking for. And you'll find that people are really happy and willing to answer you, but do post one question at a time. I find that if you overwhelm people with 9 or 10 questions, you might not get any answers at all on social media. After all, these aren't business people selling you a service. They're just being kind, and they might just have 5 minutes on Facebook. So post one question at a time. Say thank you to everybody who gives you answers to that question. Wait a couple days, then post your next question. That worked out great for me when I was going to El Valle. And what I did, when somebody would provide me with an answer to one of my questions, I would not only say thank you, but I would say, hey, I would love to meet up when I get there. How about we meet for coffee, my treat? Or do you, somebody said, I like Indian food. I'm Indian. I said, how about you come over I'll cook Indian food for lunch and you can come over. Another person said, I would love to learn how to cook Indian. I said, I'll show you how to make one of my curries. So in that way, when I got to that mountain town, I already had a few meetings set up, and then that snowballs. Those people said, oh, I'm having a get together, later on in the week, or there's a happy hour that you might not have heard of. The expats are getting together at Rana Dorada or Golden Frog. And then I met more people, and it just exponentially grew from there. Friendliest group of people I've ever met. It was wonderful. So again, it's nice to have a few meetups set up before you land. So another thing that I wanted to advise you to do when you do get here is, if you're not necessarily a social butterfly, you might need to push yourself a little bit to go to some stuff alone if you don't have plans with anyone for that day. So definitely go hit up the expat hangouts for lunch or for a little happy hour drink on your own, get the lay of the land. Um, and it depends on where you are. You can always check International Living online, the website. We always mention the expat hangouts, for example, in the beach town of Coronado. Picasso is a little restaurant and a place that holds happy hours, and it really has become sort of the de facto community center there. And it's a great place to meet people and maybe, go for 2-for-1 beers. If they're having a happy hour, they'll have that listed usually on their Facebook page as well. Or say you're going to the Caribbean region of Bocas del Toro, then you'll meet expats everywhere on the main island, which is Isla Colon. But you could maybe start at the bookstore bar. I met a lot of really great people there and heard about an event that I could hit up later that evening. And when I went, then I had already met a few people, so that made it easy for me being on my own and just looking to meet people and have a nice time while I was there. So hit up those expat hangouts, and then sometimes they will change. So again, go back to those Facebook groups. Don't forget about those Facebook groups once you get here. Go back to them and see if somebody's posted anything about an event tonight. You can go on your homepage on Facebook and click on events, and then it'll usually give you an option to look at today, tomorrow, or specific dates. So that's really helpful as well. For example, when I was in El Valle, the mountain town of El Valle, there would be tons of little events, but the place would change. It wasn't always at the same place, so it wasn't just one expat hangout. So Facebook really helped me out there. What else did I want to tell you guys? The other thing that I did that was really helpful, and we're not quite back to normal yet, but we're starting to. We were in a very long lockdown here in Panama, but now restaurants are allowed to open, the beaches are open. So Once places are operating as normal, what I encourage you to do is get on as many mailing lists as you can. I know it's annoying sometimes to get a bunch of emails, some of which might not really interest you, but that's what I did when I first got down here, and it was really helpful. If there's something that you like, I went to the Bio Museum when it first opened up in Panama City. It was beautiful. I really liked the venue, and I thought, well, if they're having events here, I want to know about them. So I signed up for that mailing list, and that's helpful because in Panama, it's very hard to find just one online resource that just tells you everything that's happening in a particular town or city. Unfortunately, people have tried to start things like that, and they just never really work out. So it's better if you're on all the different mailing lists for stuff that interests you, and that way you can find out about what's going on. The other thing that I want to tell you guys about is, or talk to you about is, for me personally, when I moved back to Panama, I was coming from a very fast paced life. And I would meet interesting people all the time. We would maybe exchange numbers and then maybe never really follow up on it because you're busy. And wherever you are right now, you could be excused for that in your current busy life. But once you get down here, I am not going to allow you to do that anymore. When you get down here and you have a nice conversation with somebody, I'm going to ask you to really be good about this. Say, I enjoyed talking to you before you leave. I enjoyed talking to you. Do you mind if we exchange numbers? I'd love to maybe get together for lunch at that place you mentioned, or have you over for a coffee, whatever it is. And then the next day, don't do the cool waiting 3 days thing. The next day, follow up and say, hey, you want to put something on the calendar. Once you get down here, you're going to find that expat communities, it's different, right? When you're in an expat community, people expect to be approached. So they're open, they're they're not surprised if somebody comes over to their table and talks to them, or if you message them the next day, you're not going to come across as uncool. It's just the nature of expat communities. It's so much easier to do that when you're in an expat community because everybody's in the same boat, right? Everybody either is new here or remembers when they were new to Panama. Next on my list is something that I think you'll find encouraging as well is you might want to make a list of what you think your biggest needs are going to be when you get down here. For example, we mentioned Spanish earlier. If you are not fluent and you're getting down here and you're thinking, well, I already have some Spanish, I'll pick it up. You can absolutely, but you know what? Taking a class, enrolling in a class with other new expats is a really great way to meet and bond with other people. Anytime I've enrolled in a class here in Panama, people would say after class, hey, does anybody want to go grab lunch or get a drink, depending on what time class ended? That's a great way to meet people. So maybe keep that on your list of things to sign up for after you get here. And there are language schools, no matter where you go in Panama, you're going to find some options, whether it's Coronado or Pedasí, just wherever, you're going to find options for learning. If you're thinking that you might like to earn an income here, then that might be another great way to network. You can get on LinkedIn, as I mentioned earlier. You can also look up the American Chamber of Commerce in Panama. They have a really good, informative website, and they will generally have meetings that you can attend, see if maybe you want to join, or just do some networking. That's a good way to meet people as well, and it just comes from any needs that you might have. Then also make a list of any things that you may have always wanted to try. If you have always wanted to take a surfing lesson, I know expats of all ages who have gotten down here and done that, surfing, paddleboarding, even fishing, whatever it is. If there's something that you're looking forward to trying here, sign up for that. Don't wait, sign up, and then you might meet some people with similar interests when you do that. And also, keep in mind any special interest groups that you are a member of right now. What are you doing right now at home? What faith-based groups are you a member of? Maybe if you're a person of color like me, I'm Indian. When I first came down here, I said, well, maybe I can meet some other Indian expats like me. And I found the temple and I met some people through that. I never went to temple in my life before, but it was a great way here to go and meet people and network a little bit. Um, I think there's a Black Expats in Panama Facebook group. There's a Young Expats in Panama group. There are churches that hold English speaking services in places like Gorgona, the beach town immediately next to Coronado. If that's something that's of interest to you, then you can reach out. So, whatever special interests you have already, whatever groups you're a member of already, that may transfer here to similar groups in Panama, if that makes sense. Finally, once you've got your household set up in Panama and you've done that, you've signed up for your Spanish classes and you've got the power turned on and you've got your cell phone set up, all of that good stuff, it can be tempting to just kind of chill and spend a bunch of time at home. And I would encourage you to not do too much of that, to just push yourself, even if you don't have a class or anything to do today. It's the digital age again. This is a great thing. There's Wi-Fi almost everywhere. If you were thinking of just reading, or if you were thinking of emailing with friends back home or catching up on Facebook with friends back home, take your laptop or your tablet or your smartphone, whatever device you're using, go sit at a cafe instead of sitting at your home. And again, you might end up meeting people or just, finding a great favorite chef or a dish. There are always opportunities. And at the beginning, I really did say yes to everything. And a lot of stuff that I didn't think was going to turn into anything ended up yielding the richest, the best friendships. For example, one of the expats that I met here in Panama City early on said, "Oh, I have this high-end consignment shop," to me. Roz Beitel, we talk about her all the time. She doesn't mind being named in these videos. She owns a consignment shop named Promises. And at the time, I was thinking, God, moving everything down here was a pain. I need a new pair of shoes. Like, I need a hole in the head. No, I do not want to go shopping. But I had met this nice person and I thought, well, let me just go and see. So I go down to her consignment shop and we get to talking. I don't think I even bought anything that day. But it turned out that she was, again, I knew that I had met her already. I had thought that she was a very nice person, but she was also so well connected in the charity scene here in Panama. And so she had all this additional information for me about different types of expat groups that do volunteer work, spay and neuter work, giving back to their communities, and we ended up becoming very good friends. And she ended up also being just a wonderful, wonderful resource for me. And again, if I had wrinkled my nose at going to see her shop, I might never have learned that. So again, when I was new here, I said yes to everything. And don't be afraid of the hit and miss. Half of the stuff you try may not pan out. Half of the friendships you start may not really last very long. And some of the people that you meet at first and don't think are gonna, become lifelong friends will be the ones that you become friends with. You just never know. So I always say, try everything. Now, the flip side of expat life here in Panama is that a lot of expats, once they have been here for a while, will tell me, there's too much to do. Once I did, network a little bit and got myself into a few groups, I found that there was too much to do. It was a little bit like being in college again. We're here, we're free from our kids, we're here from the responsibilities that we had back home, and it was just too much going out and drinking and partying. And that is also very true. It can be that if you let it. But again, it's your choice. You can decide to pull back if and when you need to once you've sort of found your groove here in Panama. So don't worry about that too much. Some of the most popular communities include Boquete in the mountains and Coronado on the beach, and of course Panama City, where I am here. We have tons and tons and tons of outdoor activities. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and say that aside from snow skiing, we have everything here. Whatever you're interested in, whether it's rock climbing or just nature walks, wherever you live in Panama, including Panama City, which is, I think, the only capital to have a rainforest within its boundaries in the world, you are going to find great options for getting out into nature.